Out of control. And this Thursday, I will be traveling down to Texas, where Governor Rick Perry is going to join me along the border. We're going to give you, our viewers, a firsthand tour of the situation, a Hannity special investigation we hope you won't miss. But first, to see just how bad things are, well, you need look no further than Marietta, California, where protesters had blocked buses from dropping illegal immigrants in that town. And joining us with the very latest on that standoff from California tonight is Fox's own Will Carr. Will.
Hi, Sean. Well, throughout the day, we've seen several hundred supporters and protesters. The battle lines have been drawn. Both sides are fired up. They're all waiting to see if any more buses will be delivered to the processing facility here in Marietta. Protesters say that they're worried that since this isn't a long-term housing facility, the immigrants might be released after they're processed. They fear that taxpayers will then have to foot the bills for food, clothing, shelter, and health care. Some protesters say they're even willing to go to jail to stop any bus that comes into this community.
At the least. At the least. I don't have a fortune, but I have my life and I have my sacred honor. It's going to have to be enough.
This is the federal government forcing its will upon a community. And it's frustrating because I'm watching a federal government treat people like cattle for a political agenda.
A number of the supporters say it would be inhumane to not help the immigrants, many of whom are women and children.
I don't think that mobbing a bus of terrified children is the way to go about it. I think that if you want to protest this, take it to your politician's doorstep. Take it to the White House. Don't terrorize little kids who are already scared.
Earlier today, a plane loaded with immigrants landed in San Diego. There were reports that the immigrants were then bused to Chula Vista. As for how many are going to come here in the future, the mayor says that he has no idea because federal authorities are not telling him anything.
We're trying to get information out to both sides of the protest line, but when we don't have answers, people get very, very frustrated.
The mayor says that this is a very small, tight-knit community, and he says, Sean, that over the last week it has been very controversial here. In fact, he says the biggest controversies he ever dealt with before this were salary increases and term limits. Sean.
All right, Will, in California tonight, thank you. Now, the consequences of illegal immigration is not just an issue along the southern border. Joining me now, Washington Times writer David Boyer. He has a shocking report on a very disturbing situation in Pennsylvania. David.
Sean, last month in Philadelphia, which has declared itself a sanctuary city, meaning they protect illegal immigrants from deportation, there was a case where a doctor was walking to her home after a night out with friends. She was approached from behind by a man who forced her into her home. He raped her repeatedly. The police in Philadelphia have arrested a suspect in this case who is a two-time illegal immigrant from Honduras. He's now in jail. He entered the United States in June of 2013 and was apprehended at the time and sent back to Honduras, but somehow he got back into the United States, as had been living in Philadelphia for quite a while.
All right, David, thank you. And there is also a potentially deadly outcome of having this influx of illegals crossing into the U.S., and it has to do with diseases that they're bringing with them. Now, KRIV's Christine Galvin is standing by tonight in Houston, Texas, and she has all the details. Christine.
Sean, yeah, a lot of people talking about this. The intent now is not to degrade the children, but when you have a large group of people in one spot, there is the possibility that diseases can spread. And bottom line, according to some Border Patrol agents, things are so hectic, they do not know what is getting through in terms of disease.
All right, Christine, thank you. And there is one disease that could have deadly consequences here in the U.S. Our good friend from Fox News Radio, Todd Starnes, he's joining us from Dallas, Texas tonight with an exclusive report about a potential breakout of tuberculosis. Todd.
Yeah, that's right, Sean. Good evening. My sources inside a camp for illegals at Lackland Air Force Base say it's one giant emergency room. They tell me tuberculosis has become a very dangerous issue there. Now, nurses say the number of children presenting with symptoms of tuberculosis is simply staggering. Spitting up blood, chest pains, constant coughing, just some of the symptoms. There are at least 3 confirmed cases at a facility for illegals in Austin, Texas. Now, we've also learned that nurses and other healthcare workers are telling us that the federal government is covering up the extent of the health crisis. They say kids have scabies. They also say they have chickenpox and an all-out epidemic of lice so severe, they say the bugs can be seen crawling down the faces of the children. Now, BCFS is the organization hired by Health and Human Services to run the Lackland facility, the camp there. And they say no one is infected with TB at their facilities, and there are no major health issues there either. But my sources, and I have more than a half dozen, Sean, are standing by their statements. It's impossible to know the full extent of the communicable disease threat there because the feds refuse to allow random inspections of their facilities by the media. And as I report exclusively in my FoxNews.com column, healthcare workers have been told they could be arrested if they talk about what's really happening at that camp, Sean.
All right, Todd Starnes in Dallas tonight. Joining me now at the Hannity Big Board with some startling new statistics. His Fox and Friends co-host Ainsley Earhardt is with us. Ainsley, good to see you. You got a lot of information tonight.
I do. Good to see you too, Sean. Let's talk about some of these numbers. The Gallup poll polled individuals around the country. Here are some of the numbers. 13% of the world's adults, they want to leave their own country permanently. Gallup interviewed 501,366 individuals from 154 countries, and the top desired destinations are here as listed. Look how many people want to live in the United States. These are potential migrants. 138 million want to be here in the U.S., 42 million in the UK, 37 million in Canada, and 31 million in France, Sean.
Yeah, well, and by the way, that number's huge. So I guess what that says is if people come into the country illegally, don't respect our laws and sovereignty, and we don't send them back, what message does it send that 138 million people? That there's no consequences.
100%. And let's compare some of the numbers to the Bush administration, compare his administration to Barack Obama's administration. In 2008, during President Bush's administration, 8,143 were turned away and deported under his administration, 2008. Now let's look at 2013, during President Obama's administration, 1,669 turned away and deported. So 8,000 in 2008, and then now 1,000. These numbers come from ICE.
And now we're talking about tens and hundreds of thousands of people now. This has become a massive crisis. But again, this goes back to a decision the administration made not to enforce immigration law. I want to show our audience here. We had the Homeland Security Secretary on one of the Sunday shows refusing to answer a simple and basic question about whether or not those kids are going to be returned to the countries from which they came from. Take a look.
Are you prepared to deport these children, young mothers that we're seeing in Miguel's piece and all of these images? Are you prepared to deport them?
Our message to those who come here illegally, our border is not open to illegal migration.
I'm sorry, I mean, it sounds like a very careful response. Are they going to be deported or not? I mean, this is the bottom line. I know there's a process they have to go through. Will most of these children that we have seen in this desperate situation stay in America, or will they be returned to their homes in Central America?
There is a deportation proceeding that is commenced against illegal migrants, including children. We are looking at ways to create additional options for dealing with the children in particular, consistent with our laws and our values.
All right, but Ainsley, this is having an impact on the healthcare system, on our educational system, on our legal justice system, massive. So the question is, nobody has made that decision. They're moving them into camps. That doesn't seem like they're going to send them home.
Right, and these pictures are just awful. They're kids sleeping in sleeping bags, trapped in like fence-like material or fences, cages, and these are kids that don't have their parents. Are we expecting them to grow up and be upstanding citizens if they grew up in orphanages without their parents? And who's going to pay for that psychological work that they're going to need down the road? You know, President Obama is allowing immigrants that entered illegally before 2007 to apply for deportation deferrals. Then you have the backlogs in the court system now, in immigration courts, and then smugglers now. This is a huge business down south of the border. 12 $12,000 families are paying these smugglers to smuggle their children across the border.
And they're telling them, by the way, to turn yourself over to border agents because you will have permission to stay. You'll get to stay. All right, one last thing, because we will go down to the border later this week, and we're going to have a first-hand look. We're going to be traveling with Governor Rick Perry of Texas, and he was on this weekend, and he said the president's inept and doesn't care about securing the border. Let's take a look at that.
What has to be addressed is the security of the border. You know that, I know that, the President of the United States knows that. I don't believe he particularly cares whether or not the border of the United States is secure. I have to believe that when you do not respond in any way, that you are either inept or you have some ulterior motive of which you are functioning from.
It's certainly, we have the ability to fix the crisis, but yet look what's happening. Now we have chaos, potential militias going down to Texas, and we saw what happened in Marietta, California.
Yeah, and the president does say he wants to fix the problems, but then his numbers are showing a different story. I mean, we're seeing 8,000 individuals, you know, in 2008 were sent back, and now we're seeing 1,000 under his administration.
Very telling. Great information. Thanks,
Thank you, Sean.
Appreciate it.